A 12-year-old boy walked into a county auction with $1,000 and a name nobody recognized. And 31 years later, a $400 million construction project sat completely frozen because of him. What does a sixth grader see in 12 feet of dirt that a bank vice president doesn't? The call came on a Tuesday morning, and it was not a good one. Devlin Cross had been a real estate lawyer for 19 years. He had handled collapsed deals, failed inspections, and title disputes that dragged through courts for a decade. He did not rattle easily. He was rattling now. He stood at the window of his 14th floor Nashville office and said the same 4 words into the phone 3 times. "We cannot move forward." On the other end of the line, a project VP at Crestline Capital asked him to explain why 300 construction workers were standing around doing nothing on a site that had cost the company $400 million to finance. Devlin Cross looked at the plat map on his desk. There was a strip of land drawn on it in red, 12 feet wide, half a mile long, running right through the middle of the entire corridor. The name on the ownership record was Harlow. He had no idea who that was. He was about to find out. Holt County, Tennessee. October 1998. The county annex building sat at the end of a 2-lane road with a cracked parking lot and a flagpole that leaned slightly east. The auction was held in the basement. Folding tables, metal chairs, a coffee pot in the corner that had been running since 7 in the morning and smelled like it. Only 11 people showed up. Most of them were farmers or their sons, there for the tillable parcels in the first hour. A few were small-time investors from the county seat. One was Thomas Pruitt, vice president of First Holt Savings, who stood near the back wall with his arms crossed and a styrofoam cup in his hand. Pruitt was there out of habit. He liked to know what moved in Holt County before anyone else did. The auctioneer worked through the list. Lot 2A, 18 acres of cleared cropland, went fast. Lot 5B, a pond parcel with access issues, sat longer. The room was restless by the time Lot 7C came up. The auctioneer read the description without much energy. Strip parcel, 12 feet in width, half a mile in length. Eastern edge of decommissioned Route 9 corridor. No road access, no utility hookups. Agricultural value, none assessed. My starting bid, $800. Nobody moved. The auctioneer looked up. A hand went up in the 3rd row. It belonged to a boy. He was 12 years old. His name was Calvin Harlow. He was wearing a flannel shirt with the sleeves rolled to the elbow. His father's shirt, 2 sizes big, and he had a white envelope in his lap that he held with both hands. He said, 1,000. Even. The room went quiet. Thomas Pruitt turned around from the back wall. He looked at the boy. He looked at the envelope. Then he laughed. Not a small laugh. A real one. Loud enough that 2 men near him smiled without knowing why. The auctioneer waited. Looked around the room. Nobody raised a hand. Sold. $1,000. To the young man in row 3. Calvin stood up. He walked to the table. He signed the transfer form in a steady hand. When the clerk stamped it and slid the receipt across the folding table, and Calvin folded it once, straight down the middle, and put it in his coat pocket. Pruitt watched him do it. Then Pruitt finished his coffee, tossed the cup, and walked up the stairs and out into the October air. He never looked back. He had already forgotten the boy's name. Calvin had not forgotten Pruitt's. He walked to his mother's station wagon in the cracked parking lot. He sat in the passenger seat. His mother, Diane, turned to look at him. She had driven him here. She had not asked why. "Did you get it?" she said. "Yes." She nodded once and put the car in reverse. Calvin reached into his coat pocket and touched the folded receipt. Still there. He did not pull it out. He did not need to look at it. He already knew every word on it. He already knew something else, too. Something he had spent 4 months confirming in a public library basement, 1 box of county records at a time. Something that made the 12-foot strip of decommissioned nothing worth every dollar of his grandmother's money. Nobody in that auction room knew it. Not Pruitt, not the auctioneer, not the farmers who never looked twice at Lot 7C. Calvin pressed his back against the car seat and watched Holt County pass by the window. He was 12 years old. He was already patient. If you didn't see that coming, you won't see what happens next either. Hit subscribe and stay locked in because Calvin Harlow is just getting started. 6 months before the auction, Calvin Harlow sat at a table in the basement of the Holt County Public Library and read a document that nobody had touched in 22 years. That is where it began. Not at the auction, not with the receipt, earlier, with a box of County Road Commission records and a boy who had no reason to be there, except that his father had told him something once that he never forgot. His father had said, "The county always draws a bigger map than it builds." Find the map they never finished. Calvin was 11 when he heard that. His father was gone by the time Calvin understood what it meant. The librarian's name was Mrs. Opal Deering. She had worked the basement archives for 16 years. She was used to surveyors and lawyers and the occasional retired farmer doing deed research. She was not used to 11-year-old boys. She watched Calvin for 2 Saturdays before she said anything. On the 3rd Saturday, she unlocked the map cage without being asked and set the key on the table beside him. "You know what you're looking for?" she said. "Not yet," Calvin said. She left him to it. What Calvin was doing, slowly and without anyone showing him how, was tracing the history of Route 9, the old county road that had been decommissioned in 1981. 17 years dead. Nobody thought about it anymore. But Calvin's father had driven that road, and his father had said once that the county had planned something big for it, something that never happened. Calvin found the planning file in the 4th box, a 1973 right-of-way proposal from the State Highway Division. Route 9 was supposed to become a 4-lane arterial. It would have connected Holt County directly to the interstate spur, 40 miles north. Land values along the corridor would have tripled. The project was canceled in 1978 when a competing route got the funding. Calvin read the cancellation notice twice. Then he turned to the back of the proposal and read the legal language about the right-of-way easement. He read it a 3rd time. The right-of-way easement had never been formally dissolved. The county had decommissioned the road itself in 1981, but the decommission order named every parcel in the corridor by lot number. Lot 7C was not on the list. It had been left off. Nobody knew if that was a mistake or an oversight or just a clerk who missed a line. The reason did not matter. What mattered was that Lot 7C was still legally classified as a potential public infrastructure corridor. That meant no adjacent landowner could absorb it through long use. That meant it had stayed on the county's deferred asset list. That meant it was going to auction. Calvin opened his composition notebook, green cover, his name written on the inside front in his own handwriting, and copied the lot number, the easement language, and the date of the original filing. Then he went back to the 4th box. In 1956, before the highway proposal, before the decommission, before anything, there had been an original survey of the Route 9 corridor. The survey had been commissioned by the state. It was dry reading, pages of measurements and legal descriptions and survey markers. Calvin read all of it. On page 4, in the lower right corner, in handwriting so small he had to borrow Mrs. Deering's magnifying glass, there was a notation. Mineral rights retained in perpetuity by corridor parcel owner per state code 44-7-108. Calvin sat very still. He read it again. He wrote it in the notebook in pencil. And then he traced over it in ink. Then he wrote it a 2nd time on the inside back cover. He walked home. It took 40 minutes. He did not notice. That evening, he set the notebook on the kitchen table. His mother, Diane, was at the stove. She turned when she heard him come in. Calvin opened the notebook to the page with the mineral rights notation. He slid it across the table. Diane read it. She looked up. "What does that mean for us?" she said. "It means the land isn't what they think it is," Calvin said. She nodded slowly. She did not ask anything else. After that, Calvin began watching. He rode his bicycle out to the old Route 9 corridor 3 or 4 times a month. He drew the land by hand on a piece of graph paper he taped to the kitchen wall. He tracked which parcels changed hands and who bought them. He noted the LLC names from the county transfer records. He wrote each one in the notebook. Spring of 1997, 3 parcels along the corridor sold within 6 weeks. All 3 went to the same LLC, a company called Crestline Land Holdings. Summer of 1997. 4 more parcels, same buyer. By August, Crestline owned 280 acres of the old Route 9 corridor. Calvin stood at the kitchen table with his hand-drawn map and a red pen and connected the parcels one by one. They formed a long rectangle, almost complete, except for one gap, 12 feet wide, half a mile long, right in the middle. Without that strip, Crestline's 280 acres had no through corridor. No contiguous access from the county road to the northern boundary. No viable development footprint. They could not build what they were planning to build without crossing it. Hull Calvin put the cap back on the red pen. He looked at the map for a long time. Then he closed the notebook. The trap was not set yet, but the bait had been sitting there since 1956. A knock came at the front door on a Thursday afternoon in 2005, and Calvin set down his coffee cup before he answered it. Standing on the porch was a young man in a pressed shirt, holding a clipboard and a folder, and the kind of smile that practice makes perfect. He introduced himself as an agent with Meridian Property Group. He said he represented clients with interest in land along the old Route 9 corridor. He said he wanted to make Calvin's day a little easier. He offered $18,000 for Lot 7C. Calvin listened to the whole pitch without interrupting. Then he said, "I'm not selling." The agent blinked. "This is a strong number for a strip parcel with no road access." "I understand that," Calvin said. "Is there a number that would work for you?" "No." The agent wrote something on his clipboard. He thanked Calvin for his time. He walked back to his car, which was clean and white, and sitting at an angle in the gravel drive, and he pulled out slowly and did not look back. Calvin went inside. He picked up his coffee cup. He wrote the date and the number in the notebook. Diane was at the kitchen table folding laundry. She glanced at the notebook. "Same people?" she said. "Same people," Calvin said. She folded a towel and set it on the stack. Neither of them said anything else. Calvin mowed the strip twice every year, spring and fall. It took him 40 minutes on a push mower because the ground was uneven and he would not rush it. He paid the annual property tax bill every March without fail. In 2003, it was $47. In 2007, it was $59. In 2010, it was $63. He filed the receipts in a manila folder in the kitchen drawer. Small numbers, easy to forget. Calvin did not forget them. His daughter Nora had asked him once about the strip. She was 12 at the time, same age Calvin had been at the auction. She had driven out with him one afternoon in his truck and stood at the edge of the overgrown land while he checked the survey markers. "What's it for?" she said. "Nothing yet," Calvin said. She squinted at the land. "Doesn't look like much." "No," Calvin agreed. "It doesn't." She climbed back in the truck and did not ask again. But she remembered the day. Calvin could tell by the way she looked at the notebook whenever she visited. The second offer came in 2011, not at the front door, by phone. A county official this time, formal and measured, who said the county was exploring infrastructure options along the corridor and wanted to discuss a potential acquisition. He cited fair market value. He said the county had resources available for land purchase. He offered $62,000. Calvin thanked him for calling. He said he was not interested in selling. The official paused. "Mr. Harlow, the assessed value of that parcel is under $5,000. $62,000 is a generous—" "I understand," Calvin said. "Thank you for your time." He hung up. Diane was washing dishes. She did not turn around. "How much?" she said. "62. And?" "No." She turned off the faucet and dried her hands. She never once asked him why. That was the thing about Diane. She had trusted him from the beginning, not because she understood every detail, because she had read the look on his face the night he set that green notebook on the kitchen table, and she had understood what it meant even before he explained it. Somewhere in Nashville around that same time, Devlin Cross was on the phone with Crestline's project VP. The development plan had grown. What started as a mixed-use corridor was now a full build. Retail anchor, residential units, an access road running north from the county highway straight through to the interstate spur. $400 million in committed financing, 11 cranes on order. Devlin had flagged Lot 7C 18 months earlier. He had been told not to worry about it. He worried about it. He sent a junior associate to make contact. If the associate reported back that the landowner was not interested in selling at any price offered, Devlin wrote a memo. The project VP read the memo and wrote one word back: escalate. The third offer came in 2016. The man who knocked on the door wore a three-piece suit and carried a leather briefcase and drove a car that cost more than Calvin's house. He said his name was Warren Fitch. He said he was there on behalf of Crestline Capital, the development firm building the Route 9 corridor project. Calvin let him in. He poured 2 cups of coffee and set them on the kitchen table. Fitch opened the briefcase and placed a letter of intent on the table. The number at the top was $280,000. He also very carefully set down a second document, a legal summary. He explained that the county had been reviewing options for eminent domain, a legal process where the government can take private land for public use, paying fair market value. He noted that fair market value for Lot 7C was currently assessed at $4,200. He let that sit for a moment. Calvin picked up his coffee cup. He wrapped both hands around it. He looked at the letter of intent. Then he looked at Fitch. "Tell them I'll wait for the right conversation," Calvin said. Fitch straightened slightly. "Mr. Harlow, this is a significant—" "I heard the number," Calvin said. "Tell them what I said." Fitch closed the briefcase. He stood. He thanked Calvin for the coffee without drinking it. He left. Calvin waited until the car was gone. Then he opened the notebook and wrote the date. He wrote $280,000, and he wrote the name Fitch and the name Crestline Capital and underlined it twice. Below that, he wrote one word: soon. 3 years later, Crestline broke ground anyway. They had gambled that a quiet title action, a legal maneuver arguing that Calvin had effectively abandoned the land, would clear the strip. Devlin Cross had filed the paperwork in 2018 with quiet confidence. The action was dismissed in 12 days. 20 years of tax receipts, every one of them. $47 in 2003, $51 in 2006. Filed on time every single spring, without exception. You cannot abandon land you are still paying taxes on. The county recorder confirmed it in writing. Devlin Cross stared at the dismissal notice for a long time. His phone rang. He did not want to answer it. On a quiet Tuesday morning in 2021, Calvin's phone rang on the kitchen table. Unknown number. Nashville area code. Calvin looked at it. He reached out. He put his hand on the phone. He let it ring one more time. Then he answered. "Mr. Harlow," the voice said, "Crestline is prepared to offer you $450,000 final offer. Cash close within 30 days. Calvin said nothing for 3 seconds. Then he said, "I'll call you back." He hung up before the lawyer finished his next sentence. He sat at the kitchen table. The notebook was in front of him, open to the page with Fitch's name underlined. He turned to a new page. He wrote the date. He wrote $450,000. Then he wrote a name underneath it. Nora. He picked up the phone and called his daughter. Nora Harlow Castillo drove down from Knoxville on a Saturday morning. She was 34 years old. She had passed the bar in 2014. She specialized in property law and mineral rights, which was not an accident. She had grown up watching her father check survey markers on a strip of overgrown land that looked like nothing. She had never forgotten the afternoon he told her it wasn't nothing yet. She spread her files across the kitchen table. The permit applications, the development filings, the route corridor maps, the easement study Crestline had commissioned in 2019 and tried to keep out of public record. She had pulled them all. She read for 2 hours without speaking. Diane put the kettle on and left them to it. Finally, Nora looked up. "They never legally dissolved the 1956 easement," she said. "No," Calvin said. "And the mineral rights notation, page 4, lower right corner." Nora sat back. She looked at her father across the table. "They have no play here," she said. "No," Calvin said. "They don't." She reached for her phone. She called Devlin Cross. The hearing was held in a county courtroom on a Wednesday afternoon. Crestline's legal team brought an abandonment claim, a formal argument that Lot 7C had sat unused since 1998, that Calvin had never developed it, never improved it, never put it to any productive use, and that the deed had effectively lapsed. It was their last card. Devlin Cross made the argument calmly and with full confidence. He cited statutes. He cited case precedent. He used a projector. He was very thorough. When he finished, Nora stood up. She placed 3 documents on the table in front of the judge. The first was the original 1956 survey plat. Page 4, lower right corner, mineral rights notation, certified copy. And the second was the 1981 county decommission order for Route 9, with every parcel listed by lot number. Lot 7C was not on the list, not struck through, not noted, simply absent. The third was a manila folder. Inside, 23 years of annual property tax receipts. Everyone filed on time from 1999 through 2021. $47, $51, $59, $63, $81. Not a single gap. Nora looked at the judge. The county taxed this parcel every year, she said. You cannot abandon what the county itself keeps billing you for. The judge looked at the folder. He looked at the 3 documents. He looked at Devlin Cross. He ruled in 60 seconds. Abandonment claim denied. Devlin Cross reached for his phone before the gavel finished. The negotiation took 2 weeks. Calvin refused a lump sum payout. Tweedy had thought about it for 23 years, and his answer had not changed. He did not want a number. He wanted a structure. Nora presented the terms: a permanent access easement across Lot 7C, granted to Crestline Capital for corridor use, for a monthly payment indexed to the county's infrastructure rate schedule, and adjustable for inflation, transferable in full to Calvin's heirs and their heirs after them. Crestline's lawyer pushed back on the inflation clause. Nora held it. He pushed back on the heir transfer language. Nora held it. He asked if Calvin would consider a 20-year cap with a buyout option at year 15. Nora said no. He accepted every term. When the call came in, Calvin was on the front porch. Nora's voice was steady. They signed everything. Calvin said, "All right." There was a pause. "Dad, you did it. We did it," he said. He sat with the phone in his hand for a moment after they hung up. Then he went inside. Diane was at the stove. She did not say anything. She turned on the burner under the kettle. That was all. That was enough. The signing was held at the county clerk's office on a Thursday morning. Calvin drove himself. He parked his truck in the same cracked lot where his mother had pulled out 23 years earlier with a 12-year-old boy and a folded receipt in his coat pocket. He signed 4 pages. The clerk stamped each one. Calvin thanked her. He walked back to the truck. He sat for a moment. He reached into his coat pocket and took out the composition notebook. Green cover, corners soft from years of handling. First page dated October 1998. He turned to the last blank page. He wrote one line. $1,000 in, monthly for life out. Why 23 years between? He closed the notebook. 3 days later, a small item ran in the Holt County Gazette. 3 paragraphs. Easement agreement signed on decommissioned corridor strip. Monthly terms undisclosed. Thomas Pruitt read it at his kitchen table. He did not comment. He folded the paper and set it down and looked out the window for a long time. The men who had chuckled in that basement auction room in 1998 were mostly gone now, or retired, or had forgotten the boy in the flannel shirt entirely. A few of them had driven past Lot 7C for 20 years without looking at it twice. They had seen nothing. Calvin Harlow had seen a filing from 1956. Some men look at land and see what it is. Calvin looked at land and saw what it was still owed. If you had been sitting in Calvin's shoes, monthly payments for life, or one big check and walk away, which would you have chosen? Drop your answer below. And if you've made it this far, you already think like Calvin. Subscribe and stay close, because the next story is just as buried and just as worth finding.